Diana, thank you for joining me today. I'm actually excited for this one because, with being in the dance world, being in the creative video world, it's nice to kind of separate myself and be on the more holistic side, more in tune with yourself side. So thank you for joining me today. Did you want to speak a little bit about, your life and what you've been up to?
Yeah, well, again, thanks so much for bringing me on here. It feels so comfortable to relate to somebody that has been in the dance world and gets what that all is about, but at the same time is sort of much more open in their awareness and where we're headed right now as I think a global society and as our human evolution progresses. So I really am feeling deeply called to forward that mission right now. I am launching an app called Earthlings that is going to be a very easy, convenient way for people to kind of understand what is meant when people refer to the mind, body, and soul connection, so to speak. Bring these elements together for us, both providing some content through masterclasses with all these experts that I'm bringing onto the platform, as well as simply being able to just locate your local community, maybe find your local farmer, that is treating their animals with a little bit more
Respect.
of a respect. That's right.
Yeah.
There's this big push towards veganism these days, right? And I really think that stems from people just being a little bit fed up with the fact of our food system being so broken, the poor quality of just everything, resources that are available to us. And I think it's up to us now to sort of take back our power. And that's what I'm trying to really help shed light to.
I think with anything you do in life, it kind of stems from a beginning or a point where you kind of just got to. So what was that for you with starting Earthlings?
I am a mother of 4, so that has definitely been on the forefront of my identity and my driving force of the last 10 years of my life. And when I started to explore education for my oldest child, my daughter, I found myself diving into this new reality, new paradigm that I never as a child myself really questioned. I was brought up just going to regular public system.
Just following the routine?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were open-minded in certain ways, but not when it came to education per se. They were very driven by, the standards of you need to get these sort of grades, you want to go to university, you want to get a really solid foundation, and then life becomes more freeing, so to speak. Then you have more choice once you have that down. But what I realized, and I'm very thankful early on with my own children, is that there are many opportunities out there to start them off in a different way. And so we immersed ourselves into the world of homeschooling, even world school we call it. We started meeting really interesting people, and I put together an alternative educational initiative, as I called it. We named it after actually scalar waveforms, which is something we can dive into, but it's called Scalar Human. So most people, when they hear that, they're like, oh my goodness, what is that? Tell me more. They're unfamiliar, but it's essentially this reality that we can tap into the zero field. All around us is energy. And we can access this energy without needing to memorize facts or having to do these sort of 3D things that we were taught to do. We are actually so powerful, and we can tap into energetic realms. And my children, for example, some of the exercises we do as part of our schooling is we put on a blindfold and we get colorful paper. This is sort of initial early stages. And they don't know what color it is. And we put it before them, and they try to intuitively sense into what's in front of them. What color is it? And you'd be amazed at, again, for children that are much more open and pure, how easy it actually is for them to tap into those places, those dimensions, those realities. And then they feel empowered, and they're like, wow, I almost like superpowers. You have these abilities. And so when you expose children just to a different way of being and learning, and again, coming from the dance world, I saw how much my children gravitated towards performance and dance. So my older 2 are in that world. But because they don't have to go to school during the day, I just see how much more energized, how much more willing they're sort of to
commit to it.
And not feel burnt out by that side of things. So
that's interesting you said that, because obviously my life happened for a reason, and if my mom was on this wave and able to do what you're doing, totally different. You know what I mean? Even like the way that I present myself would have been different. So that's a whole thing in itself. But like I was burnt out so much. Like I would go to dance and I was like in grade 6, 7. Like I remember I stopped dancing in grade 6 because I was just so tired. I was just like, oh my God, like I love dance, but like the routine wasn't even a routine. It was just like kind of like a confinement in a way, because I was just always doing the same thing and going in, coming out, being tired, and then I have to go to school. On top of it, I have that schedule of waking up and going in. Mind you, in grade 8, like it wasn't like 8 a.m., but still at the same time, that was my whole chunk of the day. So draining. So it's great that these kids have that not just freedom, the piece of like knowing their intuition and growing with whatever they need to do. You know?
Yeah, because again, I think we're recognizing as a society the need to slow down and to be more conscientious with that pace of life. And that's again the beauty of, if you raise your children, even if they're not homeschooled, okay, but if you bring that awareness into their daily life, that it's not just like a go from one place to the other, they can take breaths, they can learn how to work with their nervous system, right? Understand what that actually means, that there is a connection there, that it sets them up for such a easier maybe experience later on in life, right? Like
more wholesome maybe.
And that too. Yeah. Because you're right, yeah. I used to stay up so late at night, like after dance class, doing homework, being stressed out. And imagine like,
I wouldn't do my homework, but that's another story.
Half the time I wouldn't even do it either. Yeah. I would do that at school the next day, but it's still.
Exactly. But it's interesting you said that, because yes, like giving the kids the awareness of that, but it's very hard to give kids awareness of something that you're not even aware of yourself. So with that being said, where did this start for you diving into this world of like the awareness? Like, where was there a pivotal point in your life where it was introduced to you, or like was there a downfall, or what was that point for you, if you can remember?
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back to that, because you're right, it was not a downfall for me, which I've thought about it. I've always looked back and been like, where is mine? Because I find a lot of people, it's something whether health related or family related, something big happens and it's this breaking point, and then they're like, I have to change, there's no other way. For me, I was in this place when I was 21, 22-ish years old. I decided to take a year off from university. I was like, you know what, I'm just kind of tired. I'm just like going through the paces and I don't know what I actually love. I'm just following the breadcrumbs towards a successful career, but what does that actually mean to me? So I did start to feel that, you know.
What was your what were you like studying when you were there?
I was studying health science.
Oh, okay. Oh, very different.
But to be honest,
the same but different.
Different.
Yeah.
But I was also taking so many different electives, so I don't know if I was really studying only health science, because I was taking drama and I was taking like German and economics. I was like, what do I actually want to do? I was all over the place. I was like, I could be a doctor, a lawyer, or maybe I'm gonna go like get my MBA, but I also just want to dance. So that was me. And so I took that year off university and I was working downtown in Toronto, bartending scene, right? Which my parents really disapproved of, but I'm like, no, this is something I want to do. I feel like I'm a people person. I like that energy. I'm young, and this is what I want to do.
I think that's the easiest way to put yourself out there and connect with people, because you're working with people, and like everyone goes for a drink, so it's easy to carry a conversation, you know.
That's it. And there's many interesting people. I worked right in Yorkville on a rooftop patio, so I had like a really cool clientele and like older people, and the exposure was no longer my peers too, because I found that I wasn't really connecting to my peers at that point, which was so interesting. And so this is a little bit out there, rebellious, maybe not to my nature as people know me now, but I ended up like dating like 3 people all at once, and I was living this life of like secrecy, but it was exciting, and it was all stemmed back to the fact that I wasn't really sure where I was going, what I was doing, what I really wanted. But I did reach a point within that year that I was like, whoa, I think enough is enough. Like, I'm not fulfilled in any way. I'm just gonna start to honestly sense into this feeling of what would it feel like to have the person that I'm most aligned with, almost like a soulmate. Even though at that point I wasn't calling it with those words, I was like, what would that feel like for me? Because that's all I'm yearning for ultimately. And I think everything else will fall into place. And within a few months' time, I ended up, one of the gentlemen I was dating just so happened to be like, okay, and I have a best friend that lives in Vancouver, and I think you two just like need to meet. And in my mind, this wasn't
While
like
you were dating?
While I was dating,
That's
but it
hilarious.
wasn't a love connection. So he thought that we would just be like super aligned in our interests somehow.
He set himself up for that. Anyways, that's funny.
He set himself
oh my
up
god.
And sure enough, that ended up being my husband today. And when we met immediately, it was just like this, whoa, this otherworldly like connection like I've never felt before. And I was like, and again, I wasn't necessarily thinking of him as a love interest. I was like, somebody's coming in here that I'm going to meet that, you know, is going to just be very interesting, and maybe it's going to open me up to a different world in you know, whatever, in networking sort of ways or something like that. I met him. A few weeks later, we went to England and we sat at midnight in the middle of a crop circle near Stonehenge. We tapped into like UFOs and different energy forms with this other spiritual group of people. And honestly, in that trip, I was like, what have I been doing my whole life? I feel like now this is who I really am. It's something unlocked within me. And it was his presence in my life just like unlocked my own self.
Your potential.
Yeah. And it was,
it's
been beautiful. It's, you know, 11 years now.
What was your intro to that, per se? Like, what led you to your interest and curiosity in this life that you now live? Was it through meeting him, or was it at the bartending job? Like, what was that point for you?
You know what? I think it just like stemmed from ever since childhood. Like, I had this very open awareness to me. My parents grew up in communist Russia, so there was no religion present. People, you know, didn't worship God. So I grew up with this feeling of like, I could believe in anything.
And you lived in Russia, right?
I lived in Russia till I was 9, yeah.
Okay.
So I was actually born right when USSR broke and became Russia that year.
Interesting.
So I didn't live through communism myself per se, but you know, my parents were brought up that way. So I would look up at the sky and I would feel like, wow, like I am limitless. There's this universe out there. As a child, you know, and I wouldn't necessarily share that with anybody because I also was really into, my mom used to buy me these books. They were like witchcraft and, what would you even call it?
Occults? Occults?
I guess so, but they were for kids, you know, it was like witchcrafty kind of feeling. Like, I don't even know.
Manifestation books and all that stuff.
And astrology was weaved into those books. I used to love reading horoscopes, like even in the newspaper. I'd always be like, ooh. At that point, I really identified with being a Capricorn. I'm born right on the cusp, so January 20th, and it actually is, I'm essentially a Capricorn and an Aquarius. This is what I now understood. The first half of my life would have resided a lot in that Capricornian energy, and I think it was. I was really driven, really, really focused. And then I think this Aquarian energy really kicked in and came into play. Probably once I really became a mother, to be honest. I slowed down and it became less focused about my own drives only, and rather started thinking about the world even bigger, you know, as a bigger whole. And what did it entail? What should I really be doing in order to help my children live a better life, leave this planet, again, more fulfilled and better for future generations. So that was definitely awakened also in my motherhood. So it's hard to really pinpoint. I think they were almost like these little pockets that were unlocked or
already, you know, naturally, I would say.
And along the way, yeah. So when I was young, and then Tom was like just a big catalyst to almost re-emerge that energy back into my life. And then,
like a mirror for yourself, you would say?
I think so. You're right. Yeah.
Well, even like we chatted before this and talked about the whole astrology thing. You said you're a Capricorn. I think you're a Capricorn rising, right? That's what we discovered? Or Sagittarius?
I was
What's your daughter?
Yes,
Scorpio.
Scorpio. There we go. I almost forgot.
So, wait, your sun is Capricorn? Is that what we figured out?
Yeah.
Your rising sign is how you're perceived as. Your sun sign is who you are, your personality, and your moon sign is who you are to yourself. And with astrology, they believe in past lives. So, like, in your past life, you were a Scorpio.
Right.
So when you come into this lifetime, when you're born on this earth, Scorpio is your energy. That's your main energy. And then till your last breath here on Earth, that's when you become a full Capricorn. So,
But I think I would be a Capricorn Aquarius, though.
there's probably something in your chart that gives you that Aquarian feel that's very strong, because when you have a sun sign, you're trying to learn that energy. And some people have, like, let's say Capricorn, and then their Venus or Jupiter or whatever is in Capricorn, so you still possess that energy, but you still have a learning experience to really get into the fullness of being a Capricorn.
Ah, okay.
You know?
Okay, that's maybe why I have this like overarching, almost like mission kind of quality
Yeah.
feeling. That would make sense, right?
What I understand with Capricorns, they're planners, but they're not. They're planning without a destination. So that's probably where you're
Yes.
getting that freeness in a way of like, I'm planning something, but it's wherever we go, we go. But we're gonna do this today, and then maybe next year we'll do that, and you'll get it done. It's not like it stops there; that you're doing something next.
Ah, I had no idea. For some reason, in my mind, I thought Capricorns were much more rigid with their
They
planning.
are. I think it's in the way they do it, but again, it's planning.
But it's open. It's
There's
open.
there's no end.
I love that. Okay, that is me.
Yeah, see, there you go. So, but that's what I'm saying. Once you learn more about concepts like that, it makes more sense to you, you know? So,
Yeah.
that's cool, though, that you had that experience of experiencing it yourself, I would say. You know? I think my experience with, like, spirituality and stuff was my mom, a long time ago, she had very bad sciatic pain. And she was, like, couch bedridden for, like, 8 months, couldn't move. So she went through her own stuff, and, like, she didn't go to a doctor. She didn't do that. Like, once in a while she had to go get morphine because it was really painful, but she just chiropractor, acupuncture, just not getting in that space of medicine, so to speak. And like on the way, like she would start getting into like crystal healing, and like I remember one time she came home with an 8-ball pillow, and she's just like, your life path number is 8. You know, I think that was like the universe like throwing little signs at me, because like now I'm into it so much, you know. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how the world gives us, not the world, the universe gives us little signs or little ways of like starting that journey.
It's very true. It's true. Again, when I was a child with my grandma, for example, we would just be walking in Russia, and she would like look out at down to the ground and be like, "Oh, look, plantain leaves." She's like, "Pick one up and like put it on your joint, or do you have a scratch? Put it on your scratch." She's like, "This is how you heal that." Like, you know, that those natural remedies were always also present within my household. It was just like second nature, which was cool. But then I also saw the shift of like, as I got
Western
older,
medicine.
yeah, my parents just like leaned into antibiotics just as easily, and I was like, okay,
Well, it's faster. You know, no, like if you're in pain and you're having a herbal remedy, it takes longer at the end of the day. It's not like it's not true. Sometimes it works faster, depends on what it is, but like
yeah,
if you get introduced to something that works right away, you don't think sometimes like, oh, this might be bad for me. It's like, oh, this really helped me, and the experience was positive, so like you don't even think.
you're right, and like it's just, but it's like you're trusting somebody else with your health, with your everything, right? You're like handing over again that power, not even thinking twice of like, oh, well, what if I know almost better what is best for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the place that I've come to for sure, and I want to try to share with others that it's not, you don't have to seek for something outside yourself constantly and for somebody else's validation, or even if they're a doctor or a lawyer, whoever, right? We have so many opportunities, and if anything, our body is always telling us, our mind is always telling us intuitively, if we tune in, what is most ideal for us.
Yeah. I think the question that I have for you when you say that, because you have 4 kids, when do you separate, because you have your own intuition of what your kids need to do, but when you're teaching them how to have an own intuition and they do things that are not something that you are feeling, I would say, for yourself, how do you balance that? Because like I'm not your kids. I love your kids. They're great. You know, they're very sweet and they listen, but they also do have those free spirits, and they
Yes.
are children at the end of the day. So like,
Yes.
is it a challenge to find the balance between like, oh, today like I feel like they're gonna be okay, versus no, they need to do this today. Like,
You know what? It's not a challenge, because I've brought myself to a place. I wasn't there necessarily, say, like 7-8 years ago, but I am today, where I completely look at them wanting to do things their way, and I say, okay, if this is it, this is what you want to be in the moment or do in the moment, go for it. I have to allow you to experience yourself, because who am I to tell you what to experience at the end of the day, at all moments of the day? Yes, if they're at a point where it's like they're really going to harm themselves, they're in danger, I will step in. But other than that, I don't. But we do have conversations, of course. I tell them my experiences. I share like what I would do or have done in the past. And I think they, just by hearing that and by modeling it to them, that's how they learn. And they take what's most appropriate for them. Yeah.
That's interesting. Even you saying, like, sharing your experiences, I think a lot of parents hesitate because they don't know how to express themselves that way, so to speak. You know?
That's exactly it.
Because, like, even with what you said about your parents living in Russia, like my parents didn't live in another country, but my grandparents did. So the experience you have with moving here, or actually my parents were born here, so it's a little bit different. But like my grandparents were immigrants, your parents were immigrants. So like, how was that mindset switch for you, where you're trying to live a life that you wanted to, with also having the experience that you had and kind of just unlearning it?
I honestly think it wasn't.
That was a really full question, by the way. I kept adding to it, but I hope you get what I asked.
I think I do. I'll tell you this much. I think, especially with Russia in particular, I think people in the West have this perceived notion of what life is like, and they see it to be like very different from here, and that's not true. It's quite similar. I mean, it was quite similar when I lived there. Right now, of course, with everything that's politically going on in the world, it looks maybe slightly different. It was not a drastic shift for me, so to speak, moving from there to here. What was different was this safety factor. That was only, I think, the biggest thing that stood out. So when I used to live there as a child, and my mom would ask me, we had like a store literally like close by. I could just walk in like 2 minutes to go get something. And I would go downstairs. So we lived in like an apartment right downtown. There was a lock pad like at the bottom of the main apartment door, or to go into the main building. And when I'd come back from the grocery store, I would be like looking over my shoulder, and then I'd be in panic, like typing in, and this is probably me as like a 9-year-old. I'd be typing this like code in, and then like being so nervous that somebody was gonna maybe come and grab me. I don't know, that kind of sensation. So I definitely grew up with those feelings. Like late at night, it was really hard to go to bed. Again, I had all these feelings arising of just not feeling safe, even in my own house. And I think that stemmed from an experience when I was even younger, around 4 years old, where my dad was attacked in the middle of the night, and I kind of semi saw that happening. But again, I don't know, maybe it's this collective trauma that I'm almost carrying also within myself that would be applicable to the Russian ancestry. Maybe it's in the blood and in genetics. If we look back on the different wars, and even the most recent of like the World War II, around 10 million Russians were killed in that war. And again, I think living in Canada and the United States, sometimes that information is overlooked and people don't realize.
It's not even given sometimes.
It's not even given. It's not taught in schools in the same way. It's like hidden. So I think as a culture, as a Russian people, there's trauma in the cells, you know, deep inside. So that was something I have been unpacking probably for a good...
longest time, probably
the longest time, up until about like a year ago. We travel a fair amount as a family, and when we go to new places, often I would not be able to like sleep easily, just by being in a new surrounding and like not knowing what ifs. It stems back to that feeling. So did I answer your question? I kind of talked around.
I think you did. Yeah. Even speaking about the trauma, it really depends on where you're at in your life. Like people, when they hear the word trauma, they relate it to something just like dramatic, or even just the littlest things. Or some people just perceive it as being like, oh my god, like don't talk about like trauma, it's like not that serious. And then other people are so consumed in it. So it's like, where do you find the balance between being aware when trauma arises but getting out of that cycle? Because I find people can be super aware of their trauma, but they're still living in a cycle of it. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm like this because I went through this and that. It's like, that you're allowed to. We have to move forward. The
worst thing that can happen is getting stuck in that sort of victim mentality of feeling like, oh, well, it's just my life and it's this ongoing thing. It really continues on because you're in that place. We are able to create a life that we want for ourselves, but it's just hasn't been taught to us of how to go about it. So it seems like this very obscure, tricky reality. But I think with the power of manifestation, so again, it's these like learned tools, and we don't need to apply all of the tools to your own life. You just have to find something that really works for you.
Yeah.
Whether it is you just take a few minutes in a day to be with yourself, and that could be called meditation, but it doesn't have to be done in a way that you maybe see the spiritual gurus out there doing it. You have to now be willing to look at yourself, be willing to look at what you're calling trauma within yourself. Go back into that instance, into that incident maybe that arises in you, and literally face it head on. Feel through it. Don't feel yourself though being a victim and like it's happening to you. Just be an observer of the experience.
I think that's the key word, observing, because yes, we're taught, but it's natural for us to absorb something, receive information, and then analyze it and make a decision. So what you're saying about being the observer, I've had my challenges because I will observe stuff, and as I'm observing, I'm trying to find which route to take with it.
You're like rationalizing, and if you can try to get yourself out of that, like as soon as you see yourself going that place, you got to be like, nope, let's recenter again. Come back just to simply the experience and the observation of the experience. And then you should feel whether it could even happen after doing it once. You might wake up and be like, oh wow, I had a dream and it seemed like this and this. And dreams are never literal. So it's important but dreams are very powerful sort of messengers to allow us to see our process and where we're at. When something pops up in your dream, it's like, okay, the awareness is there. You're likely going to, and again, more in like metaphors or archetypes. If something is there, something is processing within yourself. You brought it into your awareness through your daily life. That's why it showed up into your dream space. If a doubling occurs in your dream, that means you've gone into the experience and you're already like almost on your way out. You're really processing it deeply. And then when you see a tripling of something, that means that's it. It's likely you'll see a tripling, and the feeling you'll be left with coming out of your dream or waking up is very light and positive, and it's like just like you won't even know. It's like a wave of positivity will fill you, or fulfillment, or like love, whatever it may be. That's a true telling sign of like, wow, I've just overcome something that I've been battling with, or I've been rejecting all this time, and now I have processed it. And I'm ready for something new. Not to say that now everything is going to be like fine and dandy and you'll never feel anything harmful or hurtful again. No, likely something else will arise and you'll call that trauma. But once you know how to go through the cycle of dealing with it like that, it's internal. Like you can sit there and you can speak to a therapist, yes, or you can do some of these things, but you can't rely on other people to really like deal with it.
Yeah.
These people can be helpful.
It's up to you at the end of the day.
It's up to you, yeah. Exactly.
Even like having the mental power of that's difficult, because I've had my fair share where I can see myself getting in different cycles and not moving forward. Everyone's on their own journey with that, but like I really got like a clear understanding of it this year, and things I would do to try to move on from situations, people, setbacks and stuff. I was in action handling it, but like to a core it wasn't being handled with. Yeah. If that makes sense. Like I would make the same decision in different ways, but it's like I had to find a different way of, I don't want to say coping with it, but looking at it differently. Like I feel like I'm so knowledgeable, but I really am understanding what failure means. Like that's the hard part, because like I would fail things, and like there's been times where if I've worked through it, but I think growing up I worked through it maybe for a little bit and then gave up. So then I would take that little bit of working through it as if, I worked through it, like I did everything I needed to do, and then I would move on. And it's just like, no, like you have to go through that, and I hate that, obviously, because I don't want to know. That. Yeah, but like I would go through that, and now I'm just sitting here. The universe is throwing different things at me where I'm still experiencing it, and I got into that victim mindset of being like, why is it me? I'm gonna just do something new, and then I go to do something new, and I'm just trying to intellectualize what's happening, and it's not aligned with me. It is, but like it's it's like getting set off rail and the rail's coming back, but I don't understand why I'm coming back to it at the same time.
You're right. No, I totally get that for you. And I see it because you have all the different interests, and now you have to just also allow yourself to come what may, like,
Yeah.
right? Really allow that space. And it's like really the hardest thing, honestly. It's the hardest thing, and it's the thing everybody desires. Ultimately, I think we are evolving to that being the core center of what the next human being really will represent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
really
even with what you said about all the things I do, it's like I've done other things as well. The things that I'm presenting right at this moment in time, they all coexist with each other. And that was the part that I was having a little bit of difficulty with, because I would do these things and then I found myself in the same field, or maybe doing, you know, I was in a dance studio teaching choreography, now I'm in a dance studio doing videos instead. And it's like I like both, but then I was like, which one is it? Is it videotaping? Is it this? And then I got so confused and flustered. I'm like, I'm not doing either of them. I don't want to work for dance. Like, it got to that point. And I was just like, oh my God, I gotta like calm down. The things I want to get to, I'm very particular in the way that I look at things. I can also see the bigger picture. And like, I do see big things for myself. And it's like, I'm 27, but I feel like a kid sometimes when I talk to people, because they're just like, if you don't go through what you need to go through, you can't do what you want to do in the future. Because if it's bigger, the hardships are going to be harder. And like, hearing that it made sense to me, but it wasn't clicking. And that's so hard, because my personality is I want to do it now. I want to figure it out now. So you said that to me, and my brain just calculated something quickly to be like, okay, this is what it is. I didn't allow myself to open myself to what it actually was meant to be.
And you see, you're seeing that for yourself. You are limiting yourself.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's like, it's habitual. It's like, this is what you want, that instinct to just like get it done. But something bigger is kind of brewing in the background with you.
Not yet, but it's
no,
brewing.
It is. It's brewing, but you don't even know it yet.
Exactly.
And you don't need to know it. Yeah. I can relate so much, because I also have so many different interests, and some of them are in performance, and some of them are in holistic, and some are in like whatever, motherhood, like all these different areas. And this is why I was like, when Earthlings sort of came my way as an idea 3 years ago now, I was like,
oh, it's been 3 years. I didn't know that.
It's been 3 years as an idea. And then we started to really put it together a year ago, just to get it into motion. But again, I had my, like, it's not always the right time. My youngest son was just born when the idea popped in. I was like, I can't take all this on. And even now, I'm like, the big thing, I felt myself fluctuating over the course of this last year, up until maybe the last month, of like, it's so big, it's so da-da-da, like, I want it, and I see it, and I think I'm the right person to do it. But at the same time, it's like,
a lot.
The overwhelm would hit sometimes.
Yeah.
So you're not alone. But I think it's important just to persevere and to know that it's okay if there's not this like timeline. Like you're talking about age. Yeah, some people accomplish something or put something out into the world, but that doesn't mean that that's their authentic self just because they did it at 21.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean they're
or maybe it is, we never know.
It could be, but I also think there's so much more. Even if it is at 21, their growth, you know, is going to continue.
Going, yeah.
It's still going. But even if they made 100 million at 21, you know, whether it's money or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that that's all there is. And for some, and even if it is, for some people, it's meant to happen when you're 50, and it shouldn't matter, because it's like the experiences all along the way are what truly, really matters. And the way that we are presenting ourselves and giving back sort of as our energetic being into that capacity of what we have to offer is what matters. And it doesn't always have to look like putting something out there and receiving some sort of praise for it.
Yeah. You went to a dance studio, right? Like you did competitive dance. That kind of got into my personality per se, because I would go to the dance studio and we had that expectation of going to be something. You know, if our dance wasn't good, you had to work at it till it was good, and if it looked good, then we got the praise for it. So growing up, that's what it kind of turned into for us. You know, we become these performers, and then we get thrown into the real world, and then we have this performance quality of our bodies, but like even our personalities, it got bled into.
And I see it to be for the better. Yes, I see the negative that you're pointing to, but it also created us as people to be very confident, very more in tune with our bodies, which is so important. I look at a lot of children today that are not, even if they're athletes, but dance in particular gives you this essence of like, wow, because you're looking at a mirror. I feel like you're almost getting this reflective quality about yourself. You're seeing how you move. Then there's the artistry brings you to a place where it's not just like physical movement. You're learning how to like feel your feelings, right? You're evoking feelings. I don't know. I took it to be also a really amazing positive, aside from having to live up to the standards. Maybe, yeah, you're right. That played a part. And once you can pop yourself out of that reality, and just be like, that's just competition. That's just like, and competition, again, serves its place in the world. I think it could be a motivating thing, but ultimately you need to, not you, but I mean, us as everybody, to really root ourselves deeply and understand who we are.
That's not part of the programming though, for most people.
It's not. But no. I think people like you and I are here to do a job, and you really should lean into that if there's any sort of advice, because you being younger, you being a male, it's a perfect platform. You being so passionate already about knowing
and going through it. You can give people that experience. I can't tell you like how to go about it, but I think you will find out what the best route is for you. Yeah. It's been interesting trying to navigate that. The way that we live in this world, we're given cues to get in the directions we're going, and like I always thought dance itself was the destination, and it's like sometimes it's not the destination, it's the ride. But then that throws me off because I want to know where the destination is. I want to know where I'm going. I want to figure it out. So like at one point I was like, dance is not the destination.
Yeah.
And I just literally got off the tracks and went somewhere else, you know what I mean? My personality kind of went 180 and said, oh, that's not for me in general. The thing is, with me going 180, I already had these conversations with myself, so I thought taking that jump was me making that change. But it was also me kind of neglecting just going through that mental process of like understanding that.
That's it.
You know
so
what I
you
mean?
Get that. You see that about
now.
Yourself. That's it.
after doing all of that, now I get it. And it always works that way.
Honestly, I feel like that's not unlike most people's experiences, if that can give you any sort of sense of, support or something on your journey, because I think many, many, many people go through that. I just so happened my trajectory in life was like, I had my husband come into my life so early, so I felt like I had that support system in him.
Yes.
I did, right? Because he was just... whatever I wanted to do, it was like, go for it. Yes. He's also just so very open, much like myself. It allowed me to experience myself. And if I can now pass that on to others to be able to feel that same way, like I'd love to be able to do that for you in whatever capacity I could, because I see it for you. And if you already know that maybe dance in the capacity that you've done it before wasn't it, so you know that, don't go back there, for sure. But also, don't limit yourself to what it could be.
Absolutely. It goes hand in hand with trying not to limit myself, but being so curious about other ways and other avenues to take things and try things, the only reason why I have all this experience of like video editing, and yes, I went to school for it. Like in high school I took those classes, but prior to that I was little Daniel in his room just like getting on this old laptop and illegally downloading a video editing software, a music software. It's just like I was very hands-on that way, so I did those things. You know what I mean?
And you like it, right? You're good at it, and you like it.
Yeah.
You still like it.
And like even, I just had a conversation with a girl who went to high school with. That was just always my world. Like, yes, I'm perceived a certain way. I look like I know what I'm doing and everything, but I'm just so curious about doing those things. I'm like, that's cool to me. I like doing that. Growing up though, you get lost in that because the cage was taken off. You were able to put your energy out anywhere, and like that's great, but like if you can't find those barriers of like honing in on that energy, which I was losing, then I get lost, and it's not like I lost myself, but like it was just like exasperating energy out that wasn't coming back to me.
Now that I hear you like kind of saying that, I think, again, if I could suggest something, I would say continue doing what feels right now in this moment, even though it might not feel like the thing. Do that. And then on the side, if possible, just like explore little bits and pieces of other avenues. And if something new comes up and you're like, whoa, okay, this is really cool, see if you can weave it into what you already got going on. And maybe you create something new. Or maybe you leave that behind and you move on into the direction. But you always have something stable, and then you have something also new. Maybe that's your personality. Like,
no, it's my personality. It's just I'm a people person, so there'll be times where like I'll either dive into things that are very not anything near my field, or they are, so to speak, just in a different way of doing it. And it would be jumping so quick that like the people around me wouldn't be able to grasp what's happening. So it's not like they're giving me negative feedback. I can see they're not understanding it, and that reflected to me not being confident to still try it.
I just had something come in. I know this is not on point with what you just said, but I feel like it's like a download coming in for me to tell you. Have you ever wanted to explore DJing? And not regular DJing. Okay, what I'm feeling is for you, if you were to do like almost conscious DJing, so you would start off with this like almost like get a circle going, do a meditative thing, whatever. Maybe you can bring in dance elements, somehow movement. Then you DJ for a set, like for an hour or so. Then you close off the circle. You get people to maybe share their experiences, whatever it may be. And because you have your videography on top of it, maybe you can like project some sort of cool videos like in the space, I don't know, to go along with.
You know what's funny you said that? Believe it or not, I have DJ'd before. I had like, it was called virtual DJ, and I would just like be in my room like I know how to overlap music and mix and everything. Like I've made mixes before.
You like it?
I do like it. I was DJing my brother's graduation party, and then I DJ'd my friend's brother's birthday. Like I didn't have the big set, but I had my little computer, and then I had speakers that I had growing up, so I just did that. Like I've already done this before, you know what I mean? So it's funny that you brought that up, because then I actually in 2019 I got a turntable set, and I was just doing it for fun. And then COVID came around, and then like I would make mixes, and then it wasn't clear to me what I was doing with it, so I just sold it, and I just haven't done it. You know,
but see how like if you blend your interest and you make it something different, you're not just a DJ anymore, turn it into something that feels real and authentic for you, if it resonates.
Yeah, no, it's so funny that you say that, because I've done that before. Like even my birthday 2 years ago, I didn't want to pay for a DJ, so I mixed like a 4-hour set in my room prior. I'm like, you know what, I like the songs that I have, so I'm gonna mix it and I'm gonna put it there, you know what I mean?
We should do an event, man. If you're up for it,
that'd be fun.
We should co-host an event for Earthlings, because this is what I'm trying to set up right now. A bunch of different events for the next year.
I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm like writing it down.
Cool, write it down.
But going back to like everything we talked about, I think it's me stepping out of that and coming to the bigger picture of things. Because yes, DJing is part of what I'm doing. I can do it for fun, let's just say, or I can do it seriously, but it's also just like, what is it truly that I'm going to hone in on that's gonna not only fulfill me, but direct me in the way that I need to, where my energy's not so scattered, I would say.
Totally. But again, don't feel like you need to know it right at the beginning. Start with something.
Yeah.
DJ and something else. Weave in an aspect of yourself, and then as it evolves, you grow it, you change it, you morph more into who you are becoming in that moment.
So what I'm thinking about with you saying this is kind of just like, okay, the world. What, you know, DJing. Okay, I like DJing because I danced. I like music, you know, and then why did I dance? What was the reason for dancing? I liked moving. And everyone has their different reasons for dance. Obviously, I didn't realize how important dancing was for my physical energy to like release and do, but like I'm not the type of person that needs dance to figure out my feelings. People do dance and it's their outlet to like let go, and I'm the type of person that's like, I don't feel like dancing because I'm feeling sad. If I'm feeling sad, I want to go talk to that person and figure it out, you know?
Totally.
So that comes with my voice. And like what you said, just start something. Here we are doing my podcast, and like there's something in me that feels so fulfilled of just speaking, using my voice. Because dance, you don't use your voice at the end of the day. You literally physically don't use your voice, you know? So even that concept itself of like creating dances and like you're creating what's in your mind, but me on a physical level, it was just like my voice is not being used. It's not like I need to give people my opinion, but my throat chakra is not being used at all, you know?
Yeah.
And then that kind of bled into different situations where I wouldn't use it when I needed to, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
So
then you already know that about yourself. Somehow that needs to maybe be explored further. And like you're saying, you're already doing that. And I felt that myself once I launched the Earthlings podcast just a couple months myself. Same thing. I was like, it was way more fulfilling than I expected to just sit there and because it's like speak, but I think it's this conscious projection of like coming into this to get to know the other person deeper. Our conversations aren't going to be just about like, oh, what'd you have for lunch? they're deeper, and we're both meeting each other on this plane of desiring that, and it is so fulfilling.
It's even just like the community aspect of it. Like I'm the type of person that I don't need my community, but I do need to jump into a community here and there to still feel connection, because like that's just part of my personality where I need to connect with people. I'm always going to be that way. So if I ever shut that off and don't connect with people, then I lose myself in a way, you know? I don't know if you feel that either.
It is human nature. I think we all do. Somebody gave me the facts the other day of for men over 50, it was a crazy number. I wish I remembered exactly the right number, but it was something like 70% of them, they feel lonely. They have nowhere to turn to, and I think men especially just have a hard time opening up that throat chakra or whatever, sharing in the same way. Women, it's more natural for us, right? You see way more women's circles, or women just always gather constantly, like, oh, let's go for lunch, let's do this, that, and we just hang out and we talk. Men don't. I hear you with that for sure, even for my own self. You're right. I love to take the time to just be with myself or be only with my family, recalibrate, slow down, but then also get out there again with people, and you feel energized by being in that community, being in that presence, surrounded by other people. That's
even something we can get into, because with the climate of like politics and just the world around us, men and women are different, and that's okay. It's so beautiful at the same time, because like if you have the opportunity to have that awareness and meet someone that's aware of that as well, you coexist with each other, and there's so much balance and ease, I would say. What's your outlook on that, especially with like having kids and like getting married, you know what I mean?
I very much resonate with what you're saying there. Men and women have different strengths, and those need to be acknowledged, and we have different weaknesses. So when we come together, it's so important to just see the other, what they are, and not project our reality onto them, because I even found this within not necessarily my marriage, but rather with our parenting styles when the kids were younger. It was like, I'm the woman runs the household, I know better, you know, when it comes to dealing with the kids, da-da-da-da. And I didn't necessarily think that I was putting that energy out there. I was like, no, I'm giving him equal opportunity, but in reality, I wasn't. I was much more controlling of that. And so he would say, okay, yes, even though the woman's a nurturer, but at the same time, a male has so much to teach the children as well, but in his own way. And that cannot be overlooked, because I do see with a lot of kids today, because I have been in that reality for the last 7 years with our educational community. It's primarily the mothers shaping the children, and particularly boys. And now when I see it, I can sense when it feels off. It's like the mothers are constantly trying to tell the boys how to play, how to be.
Because it's different.
It's so different, because I have 3 sons now. I've lived it, I've seen it, and it's like you can't keep repressing that energy. That masculine energy looks different, and if as boys they don't get to experience that, well, then that gets repressed, condensed, and when they become a man, it's like, how do you think that comes out? Well, it comes out through them maybe violently, maybe through force, right? Because it's just been sitting there. Or maybe they continue their whole life feeling like, I don't know, they shrink themselves, or they just they internalize everything, and they're just like sad. And the men are actually very sensitive. Again, I learned this, that females on the exterior were sensitive, like if you punch us, we bruise easily, right? And things like that. But men internally are really sensitive, whereas us internally, we're almost like masculine internal, that we can like handle more. When somebody yells at us, we can like stand our ground or whatever energetically. Men, it like hits home differently.
Well, it's the structure, right? It's the way that our brains are built to be, in a way. It's like it goes hand in hand. You have your physical physique DNA that's a man, and then obviously your personality, you know, allows you to show the spectrum of being a man versus a woman.
Well, we're all men and women ultimately.
Yeah.
Energetically, we're both. Nobody is just a man and just a woman.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is not something that's, again, readily accepted in society
I
today.
think without using the words a man and a woman, we all are feminine and masculine.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Because like changing that way of speaking, because some people can be very black and white and be like, what do you mean men and women? And then, you know, obviously if they're not so developed in their spirituality, they can't even understand me saying masculine and feminine. You know what I mean? What I'm thinking right now, there's a lot of different occults and different ways that people connect to the universe and stuff. I've been on that road of astrology and like life path numbers, and like there was a couple that I know. The wife is very masculine, like not physically, just how she is. Like she wants to run the rules, and the husband's very submissive. I don't do this with anybody. I don't want to sound crazy, but I looked at the life path numbers and I just wanted to see what was there. So the number 1 is masculine. Like the universal number of 1 is a masculine. It's starting, beginning. And then number 2 is feminine. So the male was a life path 2 and the female was a life path 1. So even if they were to go, they could do whatever they want. If they were trying to go to therapy and get it done, this and that, that is just something that's built in them that's never going to change.
This is where I'm going to interject a little bit. I don't think it can't change. I think they came in with that number, and that's what they came in with, the energy. But much like we were talking about the horoscope, and there's an evolution, I think it would just take a lot of energy. But I think there is a possibility for them to balance themselves out, so to speak.
No, 100%. I think my best analogy, you can train, let's just say, a dog to do A, B, C, D, and they're like fully trained, but they're still an animal at the end of the day. They still have those tendencies of, they can be controlled, but to their core, there's still that animalness of protecting. Oh, my dog's barking again at the people outside. Like, you can train them as much as you want. There's still a little bit of essence in them that's still going to have a core of what they are.
For sure. I think you're right. The essence.
And I 100% I agree with you. You have the free will. That's the thing. It's coexisting between I have free will and this is my life path.
Yes.
That is difficult.
Ever rigid and set in stone. Exactly. The numbers, the astrology, all the human design, none of it is like set in stone. I don't like to get stuck in like, this is who I am.
Yeah. But even, sorry to cut you off, my use of astrology and life path numbers is not my way of communicating and living life. It's a different way of learning about myself and explaining myself and learning the world around me versus like the Bible. If you follow the 10 commandments, you're going to be a good person. I don't take astrology and I do that exact same thing. It's just another version of understanding the world around me. Because like there'll be days where like I go to my astrologer and she'll say one thing and it doesn't make sense, and then like I look at a concept that's completely same but it's different. Again, it all coexists, but then it makes sense to me. It's like, okay, for this situation, you know, astrology wasn't really helping me, but it made sense after looking at it from here. So it's just like gathering data and trying to just really understand who you are, I feel.
But I like how you said it. Ultimately, like you take what you hear and you still intuitively feel into what makes sense for you.
I'm starting to do that now. I didn't that taking it as a grain of salt has been difficult. So now I'm at the point where like, okay, the grain of salt is definitely needed.
Yeah. Exactly. There's no rush. There's no like perfect timing
there's definitely
to get
no
somewhere.
rush.
No, you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where it's difficult. And again, just going back to the whole saying of this podcast, I guess, is just going with the flow, because I've been talking about it in every single one. Just going with the flow and like hearing those things make so much sense. But it's like, oh my God, like hearing it over and over again gets me going crazy, because I'm just like, okay, I already heard this. I want to hear something new. You have to
Until
hear
you
that.
face that, you're not hearing anything
Yes.
new.
Exactly.
And you know that. So that's awesome that you're already in a place. That means you're so close. You're like at that point of like, something new. It's going to congeal. It's going to come together and be really exciting.
You know what's interesting as you said that? I'm going to go back to my astrology, her best way of explaining it. She said I was born in a balsamic moon. I think that's what it's called. And it's like the phase right before it goes to a new moon. It's always like just the thing right before something starts, because a new moon is a new beginning.
Right.
So that phase before it is the right before what you just said, the big boom. Mm-hmm. She told me, she said, you're always going to feel like that with anything you do. Because she's like, well, you can take whatever you want from this. She's just saying the way that the moon was set on your birth, because the moon is emotions, that's what a moon is. And she's like, you're always gonna have that feeling of right before you get to something, you don't get it. The beauty of that is that's who you are as a person, that's your personality, that's what's gonna keep you going. Because if I get stuff right away, I get bored easily. I probably wouldn't have met you or been in this world, because I would have been doing God knows what somewhere else, you know what I mean? So just the fact that I have that understanding, I can take that or I can leave it. Having that understanding of the moon is gonna make you always feel like you're just about to get to something but you're not there yet. It reminds me when I'm in those moments of like, oh, I missed it. Instead of reverting to something different, it's like, no, okay, if it's always gonna feel like that, just keep riding that wave.
See, that's awesome. You just took something that was so negative for you and you just flipped it. And now you're like, okay, it can be a positive. And I think that's a huge lesson to take away for everybody, to be able to do that in their life. Like, everything can be viewed from two angles. When you get sick, like, your body is literally there telling you that you're burnt out. You've been going. You need to slow down. You need to look at yourself, try again. And if you keep going at that same pace, well, you're probably gonna get sick again pretty quickly after. Like, I just talked to a friend who got Lyme, and she was like, whoa, it was just like all my mind, my healing happened through processing this reality. It was not really on a physical level. And that was really amazing to hear. Yeah. But
even like what you said about it's all in your mind, have there been times where you found yourself lying to yourself in situations, kind of having the ego put in front and then realizing after, like, oh, I shouldn't have made that decision because it wasn't really what I needed to receive?
You know what? I have not felt that for the last 11 years. So
amazing.
Literally, my shift in my life occurred like so much. Like, actually a big thing that I stepped into wholeheartedly was truth around that same point of when I met Tom. And if you don't live in your truth, if you are letting anything else sort of drive you, that's not the real you. You're not really experiencing life to the fullest. And then I was like, you're right. So why do I even want to exist? When I already have that understanding here now, I'm like, no, I only want to reside in my truth. So everything I've approached and do approach is from my heart. There's no lies, there's no ulterior motives. And I do really feel like it served me, for the better, for sure.
What are the conversations you have with your kids with concepts like that? I don't want to say how do you dumb it down for them, but what's the best way you explain?
The interesting thing, I don't dumb anything down for the kids, because I think that's another thing. I think a lot of kids are approached that way and they feel through it. They know you're kind of lying to them. They feel that you're dumbing it down for them in a sense. It's still the same concept. My husband goes even further, where he actually literally uses these big words and he's like, no, this actually stimulates them. Like, once they hear these words enough, they get the meaning of the words. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. You're right. It's just different from how maybe I was raised, again, because it was more my mother approaching it. But as a father, as a male, it's like a different in on it. So with the kids, it's their character again. Like Leo, my oldest son, he's just mischievous. Like, he's like, it's his character. I can't break that. So
I walk in and he's half looking at the door and looking at me.
Right? So he loves to like sneak the iPad when it's not convenient, or sneak that chocolate and like not tell anybody. And it doesn't matter how much I explain, lying is not good or whatever. Like, it's just like he needs to live through it. He doesn't do anything major, anything bad. So again, I let it ride that wave. Valentina, my daughter, absolutely just her own innate self is like, I am not doing things wrong because I know right and wrong. And if I want to do something wrong, I'm actually going to go and like ask my mom. So this steps back to their nature. We can't necessarily change them. We can just model it. And I do my best to model what I hope for them to learn and to grow into as good members of society, but also.
Yeah. I guess a question I have for motherhood in that sense. What's your advice to moms when you're trying to give your kids the best advice and stuff, but also allowing them to still go through what they need to go through? Separating yourself from being protective mama bear to this is my individual, regardless of their age and understanding of life.
Well, I think in addition that I would urge mothers to find like-minded community. The kinds of families, so to speak, that they would want their children to also be influenced and look up to. Because that's a gift in itself. There you have it. Their entire environment then becomes, if it's modeled in the home, now it's modeled in their friendships and their parents' friendships. They just see this is the kind of world that I live in, and there's no, I don't mean other reality. I'm sure they're still going to get exposure, like, you know, going to dance class and seeing these other different kind of kids and how they're raised, or
good or bad,
or the grocery store. But their primary influence and where they reside majority of their time will be modeled to them. As a mother, seeing their mother fulfilled, I think, is another huge example that maybe not talked enough about, because you think as being a good mother, you want to be like the nurturer, and this is a thing that the kids need all the time. Yes, that is huge, especially when they're younger, but also then finding and carving that time out to do things that you love, to things that help you grow. Because again, then they see this mother that is calm, is present, and those things can't come unless you take the time for yourself to do that.
As you were speaking, the first thing that I thought about, it literally just goes back to being you, knowing who you are and being who you need to be. And I think spirituality is a broad spectrum of different things. There's a lot of, like, you know, groups, like we went to that heart, what was that event called?
Curtain.
Yeah, I think a lot of women are like getting into that world naturally, because men, you know, they do get into it, but you see more so females than males. There's a little bit of a mark missed when people say you have to be you. Some people are not really in tune with themselves, and they're trying to look at a picture and be like, okay, what's me? And it's like trying to find all these outside sources to figure out who they are, you know. And obviously motherhood gives that to you, but I think motherhood brings it back to you. And then if you don't have that for yourself, again, how can you raise these kids? How can you be who you need to be?
Really important point to touch on. Like you said, motherhood, once you actually become a mother, these kids are mirroring things back at you, or these elements of yourself that you have not looked at, or you've kind of pushed aside and that you don't really like. But here they are, openly mirrored to you, and you have no choice but to face them or constantly conflict with your children. And ultimately, I don't think many mothers want that. So it is such a huge, actually, growth curve to become a parent. I know maybe it's not for everyone, but I think it's huge for our own personal growth to experience that.
Yeah. You're more so, I would say, developed in your spirituality and, like, you know, the holistic living and stuff like that. There could be a lot of parents that want to get on that path, but their kids are 11, 15, and, you know, here's a mother watching this, maybe they want to get on that path, but they obviously didn't have that first step of starting that with their youngers, and now it's a little bit harder because you have kids that are fully grown into what they experienced growing up, and you know, if you want to share things like that, it's going to be harder to get to them. So do you have any advice for mothers who are in that space and trying to navigate spirituality in that sense and coming to their own?
I would say the most sort of fun way to tap into that is probably to invite your children, especially if they are teenagers, to an event with you, to one of these conscious events. And again, not push it onto them, but just be like, hey, come, have them be part of the environment and see for themselves, feel it out for themselves. And maybe it won't resonate right away on step one, because when something is so drastically different and you were not brought up by that, and your peers and things probably, you know, maybe they make fun of it even, you have to kind of have that exposure over and over. But I think something will ignite within themselves internally, one way or another, because what spirituality is, it's a connection to your deeper core, to your deeper self. And how can anyone not resonate with that? Ultimately, I think we will. And this is actually why another place would be to get onto Earthlings, because a big part of this app is to have this community feel support for those that are just entering this reality, but also for those that have been down that path, because things like events will be available there and you can search it up no matter where you live in the world. And it's like taking Instagram and curating it to the conscious community.
Yeah.
And more. So I honestly think that, I think the in would be through just experiencing it firsthand in the real with a group.
Speaking about like events and stuff, have you ever gone to an event where they're doing these types of things, but you felt it very much so just at face value and there's not an actual connection beyond these people working at them? Or have you found yourself in spaces where it's always like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have...
Because it has been, sorry to cut you off, it's been commercialized a little bit more in the last few years. So naturally with anything that is good for people, people can take it and make it a money machine. You know, it's like, yes, there's some goodness with it, but like at a core, whatever that event or company is doing, it's not truly to elevate the soul, more so just like try to get you in and pull you in. Have you like had experience with that?
Because I'm very particular, because I really have been immersed in it enough, I can kind of see through it, if it makes sense. So the only thing maybe I've stepped into that wasn't authentic in that sense was like a yoga studio. That was a little bit too much about just like going through the movement.
Aesthetic?
Aesthetic too, the mirrors and the whole environment, yeah. Exactly. So that was my only maybe experience with yoga, but I am super particular, and that's why I want to curate the experience even of the people and businesses that are part of Earthlings to be authentic, wholesome, and real. Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to ask a little bit of a personal question if you want to answer it, kind of going back to motherhood and yourself. I know you said that your mom kind of like had that mindset, you know, like looking at the stars and stuff. Have you found any differences in the way that you raise your kids versus the way your mom did? And do you reflect on that, like, oh, if my mom did this, like I could have been this or that?
So when my kids, again, when my daughter was first born, and even when my second son was young, I went through a lot of those waves of being like, oh, I just wish my mom was doing things more like me. And I wish she would listen to my perception and views. And then that just created more conflict and discomfort. But I think it also served a purpose, because over time, my mom evolved into a more aware, so to speak, person of just even observing her own self and the way that she was communicating. And it did take me, I think, to show that side of herself to her, because she is actually one of the most nurturing mothers and grandmothers, like hands-on, but there was still this aspect of like wanting to control the children more and control their environment.
Why don't you try this? Why are you doing it like that?
Exactly. And that was the biggest thing. And
was that more so with lifestyle that you're living?
Yes.
Was that so that was a when I say conflict, I get there's different versions of it. It doesn't have to be super negative, but like sometimes you know, the way that you live is different from your mom, and like she gets worried that, not that you're doing it wrong, but she's just concerned that like maybe I don't want this to be the wrong path. Not that it may be the wrong path, but like just that.
Yeah, exactly. It was,
you know?
it was this constancy of like, oh, well, why don't you do things this way, or like that, or like it was just like thrown into conversation, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to hear it anymore. Like, you did things your way, or maybe you listen to your own mother more than I choose to listen to you, but it's because I feel that much more connected to who I am, and I'm being guided by that, right? Rather than listening to people from the outside. Like, let me give you some things. Like, it's probably diet, like, right? Food and dietary was a big one, especially when I'd be like, hey, when the kids come over to your place, can you just like not feed them this? And
Kellogg's.
It took a while.
Yeah.
But like birthing, I birthed my children at home. That was a big shock for her, you know, to initially process. And then once the first one was born that way, then she was like, all right, this is actually more natural. Like, she came around to it. It just, she had to
She saw that, experienced it.
She did. It wasn't, whereas I've heard other people's stories, you know, their parents just, it's like over their head and they're unwilling to sort of see the benefit and see the changes there. But no, I think that my relationship with my mother is probably the best it's ever been, because we've gone through that, even though, it reached a point where it was really tumultuous, but I think for the better. We kind of have to go through it. Yeah.
Is your dad still around too?
Yeah, him too. He would go back and forth to Russia a lot for work, but now in the last few years, he is back here. Like, they live together, yes.
Oh, okay.
My parents are
How was
together.
his response to this new Anna?
He is, it's also a new dad. Let's just say that. My dad has always, well, no, I didn't seem to be as progressive as I realized as I got older. He really is super open-minded. And in terms of anything and everything, he's super open. But then he's got
little quirks.
Little quirks that I'm like, why is this coming up? And like, why are you being so defensive about this? Even though you're so open about like everything else. So,
just dads.
Just people. I think we all like have our experience. It's impossible to be a perfect like person that you never can like conflict with, you know, because we're all different, we're all unique, and I think that needs to be embraced and understood. That's the journey.
Yeah. When you met Tom and started getting into this whole new lifestyle and journey, was it a quick change with your outside circles and people around you, or was that a slow change to like meeting new people and all that jazz?
That's an interesting question, because I completely like just took off. I moved to Vancouver. And I no longer really, I had like one best friend that I was still in touch with. Everybody else.
So your community wasn't that big to begin with?
I mean, it was. I was always very social, but I guess I didn't have many close friends.
Okay.
I'll say that. Yeah, but I always had tons of friends around me, but they were not close. And what I realized is I actually didn't desire, in that first year of meeting him and living with him and getting pregnant, I didn't desire to have other people around me. It was so interesting. I like cocooned and went into our relationship so deeply. But I also found myself meeting new people that were much more aligned pretty quickly. Like, for example, I started going to see like a holistic like facialist. And homeopath as well. Yeah. And like these people became my friends, because even though they were older than I am, I was like, whoa, I really like relate to them.
Yeah.
And there was such an ease to relating to these people now, because they just understood me. I didn't have to like convince them that there's value in who I am today comparative to maybe who I was when they first met me. And but even my friend, my close friend who I'm still good friends with, it was a shock to her system, even though she was supportive. But I could see it was a shock, like, whoa, you're pregnant all of a sudden? Whoa, you're having a home birth? Whoa, like everything. It's just like, what?
Did any of this lifestyle like influence her to kind of go on that path?
100%. Down the road now. She still doesn't have kids, but 100%. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask that because I know my example, I think with food, even herbal medicine, like when you start getting on that path, when you're surrounded by people that are into like the Western medicine, they don't see it bad or good. It's just like, this is what it is, you know, you take Tylenol, you have a headache, blah blah blah, and then like you start doing these things, and then why don't you have some peppermint oil on your forehead, help with your headache? And you know, that whole transition is hilarious, because you're really tested to like really try and do these things, and then either you're influencing your friends or you're not. So that's why I wanted to ask you if there's been any challenges integrating this new lifestyle. But I feel like you kind of just stopped and went, you know.
I went cold turkey, and I think not many people do that. I don't even know why. Like in that moment when I look back, I'm like, I guess I knew myself that well and I trusted myself that much, because when I was getting on that plane to move to Vancouver at 22 years old, my parents were like shocked and ready to like this, like I didn't talk to them for months after. And so when I first got pregnant, the first few months even with my daughter, I think I still was barely talking to my mom. And it's then when I shared that with her, she was like, okay, what am I doing? I'm a mother, like this is my daughter, like we have to like, then the relationship started to evolve. Yeah.
What was that time for you like? What was going through that for you?
I don't know if the feeling is fear, but a lot of like sadness emerged, and a lot of releasing of these
negative emotions.
Definitely. It was I'd cry a lot in that first year. I actually was not a crier before, but there I was just like crying.
It's the Capricorn in you.
Oh, yeah.
They can be a little bit cold.
Right. Well, that's it. When people meet me, they're like, "You're not a Capricorn." I'm like, I'm like,
and then that's when you're supposed to say, "Not yet."
You're right. I'm the Scorpio. I guess it makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, you're right. But I'm also, my Pisces is moon. I mean, my moon is Pisces.
So you do have, your water signs have their emotions, right? So
yeah. And so with that huge release, again, I think what anchored me all along was that I just felt like
you had your partner. Yeah.
He was never going to let me down either. You know, people like meet their partners and they're kind of like, it's new, I don't know, or even years into it, I don't know if they can like wholeheartedly trust their entirety. Like
infinitely,
I really felt like we are like one. Like we were like two souls divided into one. I didn't even mention this actually, so I forgot. On that first evening when we met and we were having our like long 6-hour conversation, him and I just like talking about anything and everything, he saw these two sine waves, which are like those wavy kind of things, if you know sine waves. But two of them, they were like opposite.
Like saw them?
He saw them in his like, nope, like vision when he was looking at me, and they like came together. So it's almost like this quality, I guess, what it felt like to me once he shared that, it's what I was feeling, like I said, those two souls as one. Like
he probably has a lot of different concepts and understandings.
we can bring him
things.
into the podcast.
Oh, true. Is he
He
there?
can jump into the next one.
True. Very true. You guys do the same things, or like what does he have anything that like we both have our level 1 Reiki? Does he have stuff like that, or
He's a really tricky one to sort of like identify what he has, and because he also has a lot, but he also exists in this reality where he's done a lot of external stuff, and this conscious work for him has been really internal. But what that means is also because he believes it's still being seeded out there, but it's not in this like physical way. He basically writes his own thoughts down. He even will post them like his Facebook posts or whatever, but he doesn't do it for people. He does it for himself to be able to go back to, and he does go back to, and he sees like his own process and where he's at. And again, this is a little bit out there for maybe those of, you know, that are not really into the spiritual plane, but I think it's so relevant to mention. When your words and your intentions are written down or said or whatever, they then go into this field phenomenon that again is more energetic, but everything resides there.
It's a vibration.
It's a vibration. So his thoughts come together in such ways that are so evolved and so profound. They could be parallel to people that were really highly regarded. I don't know, like Nikola Tesla, and even like Jesus's teachings. Like it's really that deep. It's deep, deep, deep. And he gets to these answers, and then it's out there. Like it's hard to say. But Tom started out with theology school because he was just...
That's like history kind of?
No, that's actually like religion.
Oh. Well, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand a little bit, religion and history.
History of religious, like ancient civilization, religious.
I love that. My version of that is just going on YouTube. But anyways.
Well, he was just, and his parents were atheists. So he was like,
well, it's easier to get into that if they're not so like heavy on you being like, don't believe anything. Like if you don't have that like stern religion behind you, you kind of just easily just like, oh, what's this? This is cool.
Yeah. And from his experience, it was like his parents actually kind of felt cold, and there wasn't this communal family aspect, so that the religious stuff actually pulled him that direction to get this unity kind of feeling in him. So he did that for 2 years, he finished that, and then he went on to university and he studied psychology as an undergrad, and then he did his master's in like ancient civilizations or something like that. And then he ended up going to law school. And
that's a flip.
but because he's like, he's got all these different sort of like, he really loves language and is really good at language. And there was something about law that really drew, but the ancient civilization and religion stuff is really that spirituality aspect and that tapping into like, what were these ancient people about and doing? And a lot of the time, it's like, it's not just what's presented in these history books that we're told. There's so much more to that picture. Anyway, fast forward all that, he was also an incredible lawyer along the way. Right out of law school, he went on to work for the Supreme Court, and he wrote a bunch of the tax, like textbooks that they still use today. And like
done a lot.
He's done a
lot. Both on an astral and a physical.
Right? But that stuff that with the ancient civilizations and the religion stuff that began there for him then showed itself around 2008, 2009. So he retired from law because they had a family business that, actually, he was going to retire anyway before the family business sort of So this is him. He's like, he trusts himself so much. He's like, I just had enough of this. This is not like fulfilling me in the true calling. I'll be okay. I'll just leave this behind and figure out what's next for me.
And then you guys met.
No, not quite, but yes, soon. But before me, no, there was like a good 4 years of when he started tapping into this extraterrestrial community. Okay, or these like just really forward-thinking people that were thinking galactically, thinking cosmically. They were putting projects together. Like, so he funded a bunch of their documentaries. I'll have to share some with you.
Do you have any that come to mind?
One was called Sirius by Stephen Greer. And then there was there was like a tribunal they were calling. Anyway, I'll have to send you the links. There's another man named Bashar. Well, he's a channeler, and I think what he channels is Bashar as the being. He's pretty big right now. He like blew up on social media. So he was tapping into all these different really interesting groups of people and trying to help forward the disclosure movement. Who was the one, even in politics, not Hillary Clinton, but there was a guy that was working with Hillary Clinton, essentially. But this pose, I forgot. I'm not good with names. I always forget this. No, not Kennedy. Somebody else.
Explain what it is. Maybe it'll come to me.
He wants to disclose hidden information that in regards to extraterrestrials and what we know of.
Was it Bush?
No, Bush. Of what's possible and what, like, we have technologies basically. There's like Black Ops has technologies for us to like time travel and like do all sorts of things. Like, there's a whole other reality.
We can touch on this because I watched all those videos. There's technology out there that we have now was out there 20 years ago, 15 years
even
ago.
More in the 60s. Yeah.
So that's even like we could literally do another episode and talk about that the whole time for 10 hours because that's literally how much I can talk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like, it's crazy. And like, even what you were talking about, like extraterrestrials, like I was learning Emerald tablets and the Anunnaki, and it's like, I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, that's kind of cool. Part of me is like, you know, on a 3D level is like, I can't, like, it doesn't make sense, but like there's an essence of it being like, I don't want to say could make sense, but like there's like an alignment there for me. I'm just like, hey, this is cool. And then like talking about, you know, the whole Adam and Eve story and how that's where it came from. But then it's like you grow up hearing this Bible thing, and then you hear that, and then my brain wonders, okay, but what's before that? If there's anything before that, you know, you could get on a tangent and a slippery slope of just like getting to, you can keep going and going. It's just like, is there a stop? Is there not?
I think,
you know, like it's out of my mental capacity to figure out at one point.
I think the key is actually not to get stuck in this linear projection of like, should it all line up? Should it all make sense? Because
it does line up,
but not in this like perfect alignment. Yeah. It's because there's different timelines. Like, there's a bunch of timelines existing all at once, and
that even confuses me too. Because do you know Sloan Bella? Have you heard of Sloan Bella?
I don't think so.
She's like she's like a psychic medium from LA. She does all that stuff, and she talked about like timeline shifts.
Yeah.
And like, I remember one time she's like, I was in my car driving and I felt my car go out and in on an astral. And like, I'm so into this stuff, but then I sit there, my brain's kind of picturing that. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's so like, what? Yeah. But I get what you're saying with timeline shifts for sure.
It's almost like it's an energetic, it's like an inner feeling that you get rather than actualizing it in your mind, if that makes sense, to just help process that. Essentially your body just getting into a vibration, and that's it. Exactly, because you yourself right now are existing in numerous places. Yeah, that drives all at once. Me crazy. Yeah. My mind does that naturally, so I can get it to some sort of extent, but with the Gemini-ness. Yeah. But no, it's really, even like, you know, with the Vatican and all that stuff. Like, I don't know if you're you probably are if you're like listening about Emerald tablets. You know? Trust me, I have been through it all. Yes, I feel like I've had a condensed version because Tom's had like he's older and he's had decades. He's dedicated his like whole life has just been about learning. He just like love, and not typical learning, but then even and beyond. So I've had to condense like Cole's notes of the last numerous decades of learning of somebody that's read anything and everything and connected with so many people. So it almost like has brought me to a place where I feel really like limitless and ready to be able to like share it again. That's why it has to be on this like bigger scale for me. Take on anything. And I love where I'm at right now. I feel the most fulfilled in so many ways, both in like my relationship, both as a mother. I don't know what to call it. It's not like my career. It's not my career, but just like
it's your being.
My personal like purpose in greater purpose in life. And
absolutely.
I'm very excited, I think, of the next chapter.
You've been excited.
I've been excited.
Right? You seem like you've been excited for a long time, which is great.
I have been excited. You're right. And I've allowed myself to ride that wave of like, I don't know exactly what it is that's happening in my life, but it's happening simultaneously to my like existence, to my living. And things just like came into place. And they came into place, I think, because I'm literally manifesting like this house that I live in.
Or shutting it off and just letting it be.
Maybe. Yeah. Like even our house when I was pregnant with our third child, right at the beginning of COVID,
visualizing.
Just like had visualized thoughts, of like I want to live in a semicircular house, and then this house came along and we moved like a month before COVID and we were in this house a month before COVID.
What's your experience with energy manipulation? So experiencing, people on the other side, black magic, that whole realm of like witchcraft, I would say. Have you dived into those? Have you come across it? Have you felt it? What's been your experience with that?
I haven't had like anything too major in terms of experience with it, but I definitely can sense energy. And I think what I'm doing with my energy is I was putting it more into like my dream states. So I was able to and am able to almost like control dreams when I'm in dreams, if that makes sense. So I have been feeling this desire and pull that I'm going to go into the direction of going further into astral projection and things like that. That's where I'm being pulled in terms of exploring more energetic capabilities and through just naturally living in alignment, like I was saying, and now consciously trying to manifest, because I was doing it and I think on a smaller level, but this is where I'm going to use my energy this year for sure in 2025. I'm going to visualize, verbalize, put it out there, this is it, and I'm going to see how well it will come into fruition, because I definitely do feel I have strong energetic capabilities. They've been waiting for me to tap into even more.
Do you feel souls?
Like other people that have passed or that are not present in the life, I don't think I have opened myself up to that.
Sorry to cut you off. It's interesting you say how you connect on an astral, but still shut off that part. I guess that's just my learning experience, where I have to learn that there's different ways of you can shut off different things, turn on different things. For me, like learning, obviously I just had to open myself up and then get what I need from it. But like, it's interesting you said how you never felt that, but yet you're manifesting your house. You have astral projection of like dreams and stuff. So I would just think that naturally you would have that instinct of being like, oh, I felt that today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think we all come in with sort of different also pockets and openings maybe in our system. Again, not to take anything literal, but I think in human design, it can show you. When I looked at my children's charts, she pointed to me saying like, look, this one is super open, or this one is going to be this almost like bridging soul to newer souls that are popping in right now that are going to, apparently 2027, according to human design, a whole new wave of souls coming in called Rave.
That's interesting.
And they won't know how to navigate properly in this world because they're going to be open in many different ways. And some of these other bridging souls, which I feel my kids are supposedly to human design. Again, you don't have to take everything literally, but they will be helpers and guides to these other souls to exist within this change over time.
Not that they will, but they'll have the capabilities of doing that.
That's right. They have the capabilities already open there. And I think that's relevant. I don't think all of us need to have, like sight or hearing or ask. I think it might be actually too much and overwhelming. Well, then we would be residing in a totally different reality, which I don't deny that maybe we are headed into, but I think everything then would look different, right? Whether it's however people want to perceive it, whether we are lightening up the density and going into like 4D, or whether we're actually becoming more in tune and more grounded to Mother Earth energy, and that is elevating and evolving our whole planetary energy. Basically, all that's saying is that there's going to be a huge shift in how we communicate and exist in our reality, which is both a little bit nerve-wracking and exciting. You could say, depending where you lean. I think it's super exciting, but that's also because I've been ready for it. I've been residing.
You have a more welcoming energy that allows stuff like that. You have the experience of allowing things, and
I've lived in it. Like, I've become comfortable. I've had like a decade of just being comfortable in that. And I remember like 11 years ago, even though I was open to the idea of extraterrestrials, I would still go back and forth, be like, oh, maybe what if? Like, what ifs? What if they could be harmful? Or what if they could be this and that? And now I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there are good and bad. Like, polarity exists everywhere, but I'm no longer fearing it. So I think it's just a different place in itself. Yeah.
Do you think if you haven't met your husband, you wouldn't be at this spiritual stage in your life? Or do you
That's
feel
hard
like...
to say. It's hard to say.
That's why I resisted saying it, because
right?
I know it's not linear like that, but do you think your energy and the way that you look at the world would have been maybe like 50% where you're at now if it was without him?
Okay, two things. No, I don't think that my power is sort of resided in being with him. I already was super in tune. I knew who I was as a kid. Like, I knew. So I was really in tune with myself. So I think no matter how I went about my life, I would still be here. In a sense, like, I would be open to all these realities because I always was. Do I know if I would be in my full potential? I don't know, because I think having him in my life is allowing me to go even further.
Yeah.
Than I could maybe by myself, if that makes sense.
No,
but
it does. I feel like some people can answer that, be like, oh, I never would have been in this spot, because like pivotal points in people's lives really do change that direction and where they're going, and it's powerful at the same time, because then if you were to reflect on that and be like, let's say you were bartending and like, you didn't meet him, not to say you would be, you're probably doing something else, but like you still would have been in that space of like hanging out with different guys and trying to figure it out still, and just like be in that world. So it's interesting.
I wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't have gotten stuck there. I knew it was just like a stepping stone for me. And if it wasn't him, I would be somewhere else doing interesting, important things.
Yeah.
Again, because it stems back to I knew.
You just know who
my
you are.
Worth.
Yeah.
I knew not standards, but like the worth was there. I knew that what I was capable of.
You had your foundations.
Exactly. And again, I think we do either come in with it or it does develop. And I think neither is right or wrong. It's like just how it is, right? Depending what we would have gone through, depending who believes in past lives and experiences like that. But even then, even past lives, as human beings right now, we want to see it as stepping stones and building blocks. So like, it got us here to our experience. But also maybe not. Maybe we just need to experience different things to put these puzzle pieces together in different lives to become whole. There's so many different ways. That's why I'm not somebody that's like, this is it. And I can tell you, and I'm the leader and the guide. And once I start hearing somebody speak that way, I'm like, this person has some work to do, because ultimately, we need to stay open to this reality. It's always changing. We're always changing. So.
Yeah. I'm so happy we connected and did this. I think we could talk about anything and everything about all these topics all day. So thank you so much. Before you go, do you want to share all of your links to your websites and the handles of your businesses and yourself?
Definitely. So my personal Instagram page is the one I'm most active on right now. It is at Anna Severina. And then there's also Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. That is at This Is Earthlings, which is all things for our holistic community on there. But you can also, if you follow my own page, it's sort of the primary page right now to link you to the Earthlings app that we'll be launching. And our podcast is on YouTube under that handle. You can see all the episodes, and Daniel will be on there soon. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing me on here, and just again being able to have these conversations with somebody that's passionate, about their own growth and about it just brings both of us sort of like further into our mission and into our purpose. So
absolutely.
thank you.